Today I'm going to talk about this wonderful study I've been doing for the 40 days of Lent. Today is Saturday, tomorrow's Palm Sunday, so I'm not done with the study. I have a few more days to go, but I wanted to check in with everyone. I haven't really gone through it. I thought I was going to make shorts out of it, and I didn't. I just didn't, but I'm going to talk to you today about what I'm learning, how I'm growing, and what this study has meant to me so far. And my goal, as always, is to hopefully inspire you in your faith, in your creativity, and in forgiving and loving yourself and leaning on God during the very difficult times. So please join me, friends. Stay tuned. Hello, planner friends, and welcome to my channel. I'm One Crafty Dolo, and I'm always happy to have you here with me. Thank you for taking your time and spending it on my channel. On Sundays, it's always about Jesus, faith studies, faith journaling, prayer journaling, and I always have a good mug of tea because I live on hot tea. Alrighty, so let's get into this. This is really quite the thing. In February, I continued my study on the Gospels, which is from this Daily Grace Co study. Now, what they have you doing in a day, I was doing in a week. I still have two more things to cover in there. I put it aside because I started my Lenten study. This is From Death to Life, 40 Days of Dying to Self and Living for Christ. This is quite the study. It is a daily because it is Lent, 40 days. And so I'm going to talk about things I've learned, what I've gained. I almost feel like I should do a retrospective of the entire study of the preaching the gospel. So this week is from that, and it's about wealth and resources. This one influenced me so much. I don't even know where to begin with it. Basically, it's about the gospel, social media. It brings in jealousy and kindness. And are we raising people up? Are we holding the Spirit of Christ in our hearts and giving it to other people? Or what has happened with the way we use and interact with social media? Because of this here, I then went on to change my media consumption for the month of March, and my intention is to keep it up. I'm engaging in far less passive consumption of media, less scrolling, less gossip things, less rabbit holes, and I'm trying to counter that with productive, creative, sometimes relaxing moments that uplift me and my heart. So today, let's talk a bit about this study. Let me just show you real quickly how it works. And so I'm not done. This is, it's only Palm Sunday when this drops, and I haven't finished this yet, but that's okay. I wanted to catch you up. I have a lot to catch up on. So what you have every day is at least one Bible verse or several, and then it breaks it down. So this was about harshness for gentleness, and it talks about the sin and how we transform ourselves from living the way the world is into a more, like Jesus' gentleness is displayed throughout the Gospels. And so as followers of Christ, we are empowered by the Spirit to be gentle. And so then you have these questions here, and I do go through them in my head. I'm not writing them all down because there is a time constraint issue, but this has been really informative and helpful. I'll be honest in that I was a little nervous. Since the other study I'm doing a day, it takes me a week to unpack it. I was like, can I do this? Can I actually keep up with this? And you know what? Because I'm taking time away from other stupid pursuits, I do have the time suddenly, and I am learning more. And that, honestly, that's a gift this Lent. These two studies really do piggyback off each other. So if you're looking for a really engaging study to help you rethink things in your life, Daily Grace Co. start here. And, I know this is about Lent, but I just wonder if you could do it anyway, because these two are really good together. Okay, so let's get started, shall we? So we have Ash Wednesday on Wednesday the 14th, right? And basically what this overarching theme is Jesus and God versus sin and the world. So this is divided into 3 sections. Let me just show you real quick. I think I did show you when I was kind of going through it, but part 1 is reality of our sin and how Christ forgives our sin. Part 2 is really something. Let me tell you something. It is really something. It is all about the sins we wrestle with. It's eye-opening. I'm going to tell you right now, this is eye-opening. And then the part 3, which I haven't gotten to yet, is hope for our sin. So the question is, what is the reality of our sin and what are we doing with it, right? And so I think this is a good quote. I'm more familiar with the Gospel of Matthew than I am of Mark, and that's something I'm slowly starting to gain in knowledge. He, Jesus, summoned the crowd and his disciples and said to them, "Whoever wishes to come after me must deny himself and take up his cross and follow me." Right? And so the whole thing about this first part of this study is recognizing and seeing, how we need to refocus our head. Okay. And I think that really, again, another verse, 2 verses from Mark. "For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? For what can a man give in return for his soul? Set your mind on things above, not on things on the earth." That's Colossians 3:2. And you go through various scriptures in this section to say, wait, you're doing it wrong, and you need to reframe everything. And start, you just have to start at the bottom of the tree before you get into all the branches. At first, I'll be honest, this first section, I was like, okay, this is interesting. And then I did a whole thing here about the journey of Lent, right? The role of sin in the world, etc. You can't hide from God. Lent allows us to take inventory and reassess. How have I seen my role in shaping the orientation of my life, and etc. And I think the first section is designed to get you to ask questions. This is my dashboard for March. And so I just kind of put these here as reminders: humility, selflessness, kindness, and mercy. And I love this season. I unabashedly, Easter has always been my favorite holiday from when I was a child. And I remember it snowed one year, asking my mother why the bunny hadn't left any tracks. And she said, "Oh, he takes a branch with, he has branches and he hides his tracks so we can't find them." And I believed her. I always loved Easter. So now, as I said, we're getting into, and I put here an enriching study of our everyday sins and that turn us away from God and Jesus, and to focus on the values of the world. This is where it gets into specific sins. And so what I decided to do, in addition to doing the verses, you'll see I write here a quick little synopsis. And it goes through a variety of things you may not consider sinful, and yet it is. So we start here with God is light, and in him there is no darkness at all. But if we walk in the light as he is in the light, we have fellowship with one another. And 1 John 1, 5 and 7. And here we go from unbelief to belief. And what's interesting to me is we spend a lot of time in the Gospels, but then we go back to the Old Testament in many cases. And sometimes if there's 2 verses or multiple verses, 2 books, I just pick which one I feel I need to learn more from, if that makes sense, or what resonates with me. And here we have, it talks about anxiety. And ironically, I read this, I studied it, and then I had some serious anxiety later in March. And so I need to listen better, apparently. But from apathy to mercy, from lack of compassion to being full of it. And so when they're talking about anxiety and idolatry and so forth, these are all things that take us away from God, and we don't always see them. And when you talk about something like idolatry, what about success? Worldly success. What about worldly values and praise? And oh, good Lord, I hear the cows. Sorry, they're loud behind me. What do we define? What do we seek to put value in, and where should our value be actually put? And so that really matters to me, and I just wanted to come on here, and even though I'm not done, I want to share all this with you. Another one is hatred to love, and they talk about the love of Christ is how we should see others. And that's not always easy to do. And it says it in here, okay, in the study. It says, over and over, this isn't easy. We react this way, but you need to reprogram your thoughts. And I thought, wow, okay. This also here gets into greed in the temporal world and possessions versus God in Jesus. And I like this. Again, it's a verse from Mark. Jesus looked at them and said, with man it is impossible, but not with God, for all things are possible with God. And that we forget that. And so we think we have to accumulate X, Y, and Z, and we have to succeed in these certain ways. And we're so focused on the world because we're in the world. We're living in the world, and we're scrubbing along, as I like to say. And then boom, let's think about what really matters. And here we have one of my favorites from Matthew 6:27. And which of you, by being anxious, can add a single hour to his span of life? Our discontent to being content regardless of circumstances. And I think that's something I see over and over again in this study. Here we go through worldly lust through God versus God's joy. From hopelessness to hopeful, as in hope in God. This is a verse from Lamentations. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. And then from Matthew 11:29. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. Harshness versus the gentle spirit and ways of Jesus. Okay. Really, this really does, it makes me think in so many different ways. I don't know how else to say it. Pride to humility. I think humility is one of the most underrated virtues. Selfishness to selflessness. And then the 40 days doesn't include Sundays, although at some point I messed it up and then I had to correct that because I got so involved in my reading. I mean, can you imagine? So what I write here is Lent gives us all a chance to repent and reset. By leading our way with the Gospels, we can work to change ourselves. And this gets into the role of sin in keeping us from God and Jesus. Seeking and acting to divide, so divisiveness versus unity. This one, again, the over and over, be one, right? Proverbs 28:13. Whoever conceals his transgressions will not prosper, but who confesses and forsakes them will obtain mercy. So hypocrisy versus honesty. Patience versus impatience. About judging people and forgiving, may God forgives you your trespasses. We have to forgive others. Sinful anger, righteousness. And then I think is where I kind of went into that a little more. And then finally, this past week, again, judgmental versus kind, fighting bitterness. And that includes social media, ironically, they say, versus God's faithfulness and the Gospels. That's an important lesson. Jealousy destroys people. No, Christ has us. I've seen that with people, and it's a scary thing. It just, and this judgmental thing. Okay, so I don't know if you remember those shows on E! They used to have the fashion police and all that. I used to watch them. Joan Rivers and so forth. Remember those? I'm not into the Hollywood awards shows. I'm not really into Hollywood, but I always liked fashion. But it was all one big bitchy, excuse my language, judgmental fest. And that's wrong. Okay? It's just wrong. I myself have looked at people and their fashion choices a bit askance. But you know what? I was wrong too. And I'm leading with kindness now, and I have been for quite some time. And where does the judgmental come from? And Dr. Phil has a really good term called leveling. And I've seen it, I've experienced it so many times. And that kind of made me a lot more humble, if you want the truth, where people will put you down to put themselves up. Have you had that experience? And the other way of leveling is people talk about how wonderful they are, and that also puts them above you. And that's certainly part of this. Psalm 100, which is one of my favorites, verse 5, "For the Lord is good, and his steadfast love endures forever, and his faithfulness to all generations," and talking about complaining and living with the mentality of everything's wrong, everything's awful, and instead gratitude. That to me is extremely important because I'm chronically ill. And how I've gotten through this illness is stepping back and saying, no, I'm very blessed, and I'm going to focus on that. So yeah. And then we have truth versus lies, obscenity versus speaking graciously. And again, I grow in the Gospels versus the world. And then here we are with the start of Holy Week, which I will get into. I'm filming this, oddly enough, on a Saturday. So I will get back to it on Monday. So I wanted to be ahead a little bit for Palm Sunday. And I thought about waiting till I was done all this to show you this. But then I thought better of it, because sometimes I feel like this channel is a creative outlet for me, but it's also a way to put good into the world. It's a way for me to reach out to others and to remind you that you're loved, that you matter, that you are fearfully and wonderfully made, that you're a child of the Most High and loving God, that you are perfect in your imperfections. And I want you to know that if you need me to pray for you, especially as we go into Holy Week, please let me know in the comments. I'm here to uplift you, and as you uplift me. And remember, we are in this together, friends, and that really matters to me. Wishing you the best of everything this Holy Week, and let's again, put on the armor of God and carry the mantle of Christ forward. Thank you so much for being here, friends. God bless you this week, and let's praise God, and let's, celebrate the resurrection of Jesus. Thank you for being here, Planner and Faith friends. Bye now.